Good evening, everyone. Today is September 18th, 2017. I'm Nathan Johnson, the Contra Costa County Veteran Service Officer. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Veterans Voices. This is your show. The purpose of this show is to educate veterans, their families, and the community about the resources and benefits available to them, and provide a critical link to supportive services through a live monthly television program. Kevin couldn't be here tonight, so we invited Air Force veteran and Concord Vet Center readjustment counselor Kira Cerna back to the show to co-host again tonight. Thank you for joining us, Kira.
Thanks, Nathan. Tonight's episode will feature conversations with Duncan Mcphee, a Vietnam veteran and California Veterans Legal Task Force consultant, the Honorable Judge Lowell Brady, David Chernov, who serves as a Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist, and Maurice Delmer, a current mentor in the Veterans Treatment Court program. Our phone lines are currently open, so if you have a question or want to join the conversation, don't hesitate to call us at 925-313-1170 or email veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. You can also instant message us on Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or on our website, contracostatv.org. As a special part of our program tonight, decorated Vietnam veteran and author Carl Merlantis will join us later by phone, so please stay tuned for that. Before we begin our discussion, we wanted to take you to a short clip that provides some context for why these courts exist.
The longest war in America's history has just ended. The men and women who fought for our freedom are among our greatest civic assets. When they return home, we're thankful and proud of their service. Most veterans are strengthened by their experience in the military, but right now, more than half of the 2.6 million who deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan return with mental health conditions related to their service. 1 in 6 struggle with addiction, and 1 in 5 have PTSD. Left untreated, these issues make it difficult to adjust to life after they return and can lead to unemployment, homelessness, and arrest. There are 700,000 vets in the criminal justice system right now, many of them arrested for charges directly related to trauma, addiction, or mental illness. For a long time, our justice system relied on punishment to change behavior. This hasn't worked. New veterans treatment courts provide an alternative to incarceration. These veterans-only courtrooms offer treatment, accountability, and structure, while connecting them to benefits they have earned. If there is no veterans treatment court available, they may end up in jail, separated from family, without treatment, and stuck in a cycle from which they may never recover. But in veterans treatment courts, they are surrounded by other veterans. They receive veteran-specific treatment, meet regularly with a veteran mentor, and they have the opportunity to get their life back on track. This year, 11,000 veterans who would otherwise be behind bars are receiving life-saving treatment. The average cost to keep someone in prison is over $22,000 a year. If the veterans who need help had gone to jail instead of treatment, the bill could have been $248 million. And those that go through the program are less likely to be rearrested. The country's first veterans treatment court has a 98% success rate. That's unprecedented in American criminal justice. Veterans treatment courts save lives, families, and futures. It returns vets to the life they fought to protect. You can help to put veterans treatment courts within reach of every veteran in need. Learn more and take action at takepart.com/returntheservice.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Duncan Mcphee, a Vietnam veteran and California Veterans Legal Task Force consultant. Duncan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's an honor to have you. I've known a lot about you over the years, and it's an opportunity for us to talk about one of the topics that we've never addressed in the 4 years that we've done the show. We're going to talk about the Veterans Treatment Courts. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your military service.
Well, let's see. I became an officer in the Army upon graduating from West Point in 1965. And unfortunately, about 2 or 3 weeks later, President Johnson got on the horn and announced he was committing 1 million troops to Vietnam.
Oh, man.
So our
Lucky
entire
number.
class went off to Vietnam as lieutenants or captains, which was my case.
Okay.
So I served in Vietnam for 1 year. All of the tours of duty then were 1 year unless you volunteered for an additional tour. So then my military service then was just, I had studied sciences and I did some scientific work, and then I resigned from the Army. So I only spent 6 years in uniform as an officer.
I heard you say only spent 6 years.
Yes.
That's certainly much more than I served, and I thank you for that. We honor you in your Vietnam service. So you
Thank
came, yes, absolutely, and we honor all Vietnam veterans tonight as well, because the documentary on the Vietnam War is going to follow this show, and we've got some special hand-wood carved statues behind us as well. So what a great honor to have a Vietnam veteran talking about Veterans Treatment Courts. Take us, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what inspired you to get involved with the Veterans Treatment Court program?
There was a veteran who I had, a young man who I had recruited to go to West Point. I knew him well, who was an outstanding candidate and kept saying, I want to serve my country, I want to be an Army officer, in his interview, which impressed me a lot. When he graduated West Point, he got to do just that. He became a lieutenant leading his men in Bosnia. He had a number of experiences in the military that caused him to have post-traumatic stress disorder and an injury that caused him to need painkillers he became addicted to. He eventually wound up in the criminal justice system. And it was not of his own doing, but not so much as it was the PTSD and the drugs. And I watched him go through a trial, and I was very, very disturbed, thinking that isn't there a better way to do this? And from that day forward, I've been, it just happened to coincide about the time I was retiring from my career in high tech. And so I was determined, that was 9 years ago, that I would work for veterans who are caught up in the criminal justice system, who need some assistance from society because of the mental health issues they carried with them out of the service.
Fantastic.
Great.
So 9 years you've been involved in this now. Does the effort to establish Veterans Treatment Courts go back 9 years, or is it something that started maybe in another state?
Oh, okay, yeah, the history. Veterans Treatment Courts are 9 years old. They started in early 2008 with Judge Robert Russell in Buffalo, New York, who kind of invented the model that continues to be used today throughout the country. Today there must be 400 Veterans Treatment Courts across the country. In fact, 33 are in California.
So possibly in every state in the nation then?
Just about. I think there are a few without one, but yeah, I think you could look at it that way.
And so you became involved through the Veterans Legal Justice Outreach. I've mashed that
California
a little bit.
Veterans Legal Task Force.
Okay.
Yes, we were a two-person task force. We now have increased by 50% to 3 people. And what we do two kinds of work, principally. One of them is to help jurisdictions that are interested to start new Veterans Treatment Courts. And in fact, I was involved in the formation of this Veterans Treatment Court here in Contra, Costa County. The second thing we do is we help existing Veterans Treatment Courts to improve their operations one way or the other.
Great.
So I don't think we've gotten yet to the real definition of what a Veterans Treatment Court is. Does that vary from county to county, or is there, you mentioned the first one in Buffalo being the model. Has that definition been the definition of what has established the treatment courts here in California?
Yes, it's a good point. Even the model that Judge Russell was so enamored with, and correctly so, is not being followed in every place in the country where there is such a court. They vary quite a bit. I've learned that they vary according to the community, according to the personalities of people, like the important people involved in criminal justice, like the district attorney, and especially according to the judge who presides over the particular court. And so they can vary quite a bit, but they all stick particularly to a model where the judge is surrounded by a team, and the objective in that courtroom is to turn around this broken life by addressing the underlying mental health and usually substance abuse issues of the veteran, rather than incarcerating the veteran. And this is the way the California law has been created to accommodate that.
And unfortunately, we see that way too often after people come back from war. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've seen the Veterans Treatment Courts benefit their local communities? Have you noticed any benefits for the community as well as the veteran?
Yes, a very good point. You know, things are different now than they were during the Vietnam era, thank God. Because when we returned from the war, the people weren't interested in hearing from us. There were no parades, there were no claps on the back. But today, things are different. The people today throughout this country are supporting their veterans and really want to see their veterans helped when they're in need. There's very little debate in Congress when it's time to increase the budget at the VA because another program needs to be implemented, things like that. And so in the local communities, people feel very good when these courts are created, and they feel very good that veterans are being served in that way. But I think it's important to note, too, that the community actually benefits in several ways. The local taxpayers save because veterans spend less time in county jail. With a good implementation of such a court. Also, there is less crime in the future because there are much lower rates of recidivism. This is now demonstrated when veterans are treated in such a way in these courts. And then the community, of course, benefits from that.
So you've been going on this mission now for 8 years. Are there other agencies that are involved in helping to promote veterans treatment courts throughout the nation? Anyone particularly on your team or any other nonprofit or government agencies that are out there promoting veterans?
Yes, there are other people like me around the country. There are a few organizations like us around the country, not too many. But the organization that is involved the deepest in these veteran treatment courts is the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs. And the VA does a very fine job of promoting the concept and really supporting very well these courts.
Right, so we'll have David Chernov on later and we'll talk about that.
Exactly.
And I just want to remind everyone that you can participate in this conversation. This is an important topic to cover, and we can only cover it best by having your questions, your comments. Call into the show, send us a chat on Facebook. I want to address some of the concerns about Veterans Treatment Court. In doing our planning for this show, we came across some videos and some thoughts and opinions that people have concerning whether Veterans Treatment Courts are really necessary or not. Do you think that this is do you think the Veterans Treatment Courts are something that should be afforded to all populations, say law enforcement, for example?
This is a question that comes up very often. Why are we singling out veterans for special treatment in our court system? How about police officers or firefighters or things of that nature? And the answer isn't so much that veterans are being singled out, but rather that this is a convenient population to target. Veterans have unique mental health problems that are different from other mental health problems from other people, and they are unique in that there is an organization, the VA, targeting them with people who are knowledgeable, therapists who are knowledgeable about those very kind of mental health problems. So it's something that's very generally very easy to put together conceptually, and that's why it's very popular.
What about the person who thinks, oh, this is just a get out of jail free card? This is just a person who's getting off easy for a very serious crime that they've committed?
Yeah, another common question, and the answer is this is not at all getting out of jail for free. Just ask those veterans who are starting. They walk into that courtroom scared. They are being told that you've got to show up to a probation officer for this, you're going to have random drug tests, you've got to come back to court every 2 weeks, you got to do this, you got to do that, and you've got to take mental health therapy that a lot of veterans returning from their service deny. They are in denial that they actually need the mental health therapy that these courts actually provide them, which is needed. So it takes a good defense counsel and a good specialist in the VA to sometimes talk them into saying yes to the court.
And I've participated in that as a therapist, signing off on treatment records for the Veterans Treatment Courts in Solano County, actually. And it seems to, work really well for the clients and
hold them accountable.
Hold them accountable. It gets them coming to therapy, whereas, other ways they may not be addressing some of these underlying mental health conditions.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So we'll get into the nuts and bolts here in a moment. Is there one last quick sentence that you would say to a judge who's interested in holding a Veterans Treatment Court in their county?
Yes, certainly. I think a very fine message for that is there's a lot of help that can be tapped into in any county in this state if you want to create your Veterans Treatment Court. The VA will be there to help you in one way or the other, and there are other kinds of resources that are available to nonprofits and government agencies which contribute also.
Well, we've gotten into the topic a little bit here, but we're going to dive in much deeper. We're going to have some other guests with us, and we'll be right back after this short clip promoting the landmark documentary, The Vietnam War, produced by Ken Burns and Lynn Novick. Also, please stay tuned with us because later on in the show, we'll have a very special live phone interview with Carl Merlantis, a decorated Vietnam veteran, recipient of the Navy Cross, and author of Matterhorn and What It Is Like to Go to War. He will also be interviewed extensively. He was also extensively interviewed in the Vietnam War documentary. So you don't want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Tonight we are talking about Veterans Treatment Court. If you'd like to join our conversation or ask a question, please contact us by calling in right now at 925-313-1170. Joining us now is the Honorable Judge Laurel Brady, David Chernov, and Maurice Delmer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And we have a question that we'll get to here in just a second, but we've talked a little bit about the history and the background of Veterans Treatment Courts. I'd like to spend this segment talking a little bit about the nuts and bolts of getting a Veterans Treatment Court established. And Judge Brady, if you can just say a little bit to introduce yourself as a guest.
Thank you. I've been on the bench now here in Contra Costa County for almost 21 years. Wow. And most of my assignments have been in the criminal division, but I've also done a stint in the civil division. I've been presiding judge of the court for 2 years and assistant presiding judge for 2 years as well. And
oh, what an honor. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm David Chernov. I'm the Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist for the VA Northern California Healthcare System. Mm-hmm. And I'm basically a liaison between the Veterans Administration and the criminal justice system in 3 counties in Northern California. In addition to my duties as a member of the Veterans Treatment Court teams, now in 3 counties, I also conduct direct outreach to assess and interview incarcerated veterans while they're still in custody. See what treatment at the VA might be appropriate for them. And as I worked with Duncan and Judge Brady earlier, I helped the VA participate in the planning of possible collaborative initiatives with external parties such as the courts and the newly formed Contra Costa Veterans Treatment Court.
Very important role. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And Mo, you're a return guest. You're a familiar face to our audience, but just go ahead and remind us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, Maurice Delmer. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and my day job is at the Concord Vet Center as the outreach specialist. And I've joined the Veterans Treatment Court in Contra Costa County as a mentor. And I guess we'll probably get into that a little bit later.
Absolutely, we will. Yeah, very important part. Yeah, thank you all for being here. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the creation of a Veterans Treatment Court. And Judge Brady, you are just cracking that egg a little bit, but David, you've seen other counties in the local area here establish their Veterans Treatment Court. What goes into establishing a Veterans Treatment? Who's involved? Is it the lead of the court system itself, a district attorney, a public defender, an agency?
I think initially it's the court system, and our presiding judge 2 judges ago, heard about veterans treatment courts and thought we should look into this because it would be something that would benefit the citizens and the veterans of Contra Costa County, and recruited those of us who were interested in the effort. And we started looking at other veterans treatment courts, and we looked at Sacramento and Solano County and San Mateo County. We took site visits down to actually watch what they do, and then we started looking for money, because it takes money to start a court.
Certainly.
And we were very fortunate, after looking in a number of different directions, to get a grant from the Judicial Council just recently. And we started our planning process, and the planning process starts with creating an advisory group, which includes the district attorney, the public defender, the probation department, the private defense bar, behavioral health services, the VA, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. And we created an advisory committee to gather as much information from other existing courts and pick out their best practices. And we created a format for what we believed our court should look like. And it took a number of months to do that meeting after meeting to sort of hone it down. And we had our very first Veterans Treatment Court calendar about 2 months ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It was very exciting to see it actually come to fruition.
And now, as you guys were forming the Veterans Treatment Court in Contra Costa County, did you have any pushback from anyone, or was anyone not on board with the idea?
We have not gotten any pushback. If anything, we've gotten a tremendous amount of support from all the agencies that are involved because they recognize that this was a population that is different, perhaps, or had different needs than some of the other people that we see in court. And there was an extra layer there that really wasn't being addressed. And the Veterans Administration has such amazing services that most people in the criminal justice system don't have access to. So we have not received anything negative,
That's fantastic.
only
Okay.
positive.
Let's get to a very important question here, which maybe our audience is asking this question already, and we received it over email, so thank you so much for your participation. And we invite others to call in or to email or send us a message over Facebook. So this is a very important question from Vincent, and he says, for veterans with upcoming court dates, how do they use the Veterans Treatment Court? So
That's a great question.
I'm a veteran on the other side of this camera, and I'm thinking, you know, I really could benefit from a Veterans Treatment Court. I may be in some trouble here, not just with the justice system, but, you know, I've got some things I really need to get squared away. How do I get involved? Where do I start?
Well, the first thing to do is talk to your lawyer. I can't talk about specific cases, but it all starts with their defense attorney, who then, when they have a court appearance, asks the judge, whatever court they're in, for a referral to Veterans Treatment Court. And that judge will then refer it over to my calendar. We meet once a month on the second Friday of every month in the afternoon, and then we conference the cases first. Not all cases qualify for Veterans Treatment Court. Our model is that we have a criteria for those who will fit what our grant allows for, and if it fits that criteria, then we as a group discuss the case, whether it's a good case for inclusion, whether it's a good fit. If it is, then they stay with me. Their case is transferred to my department, and all future proceedings happen in Veterans Treatment Court. But the first point of contact, if you will, is through their defense attorney, who then will notify the court that this is potentially an appropriate case for Veterans Treatment Court.
And David, do they have to be eligible for VA health care in order to participate, although that's not a requirement of the, or maybe is that a requirement of the court?
Well, really the court and the relevant statutes that govern the way that the courts operate, I think, set those requirements or lack thereof. I haven't actually encountered a county where VA enrollment or eligibility pre-existing is a requirement. Okay. It is a tremendous benefit, of course, because the treatment provider of choice in so many of the cases is going to be the VA. It has that vast array of specialized services for substance abuse disorders, mental health issues, homelessness, you name it. Many of the challenges that the participants are contending with, the VA can address. But I don't think it's a requirement, no. VA enrollment as opposed to veteran status, and those are different things. People can serve in the military and not yet be included in the VA.
I can offer a little more perspective
Yes, please.
on that. The various statutes that apply for alternative justice for veterans are silent on the issue of VA eligibility. But some veterans treatment courts do apply that as one of their criteria, mostly because then it becomes very convenient for everybody on the team to know that this person is going to be getting a treatment plan through the VA, and the Veterans Justice Outreach Specialists will prepare that. My hope is always that the courts that start out that way eventually open their court also to those veterans who, because of their discharge from the military or whatever, are ineligible for VA health care.
Right. I'd just like to add one thing, is that I've personally encountered veterans who are fully eligible and qualified because of the nature of their service to get VA. They've never come in to seek services for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they're in the justice system, they're enmeshed in that system, they lack insight, or they're not ready to address the underlying mental health or substance abuse needs that a Veterans Treatment Court would. There are a lot of reasons why somebody might not yet be VA enrolled, but they can full well be eligible. And one of the key roles of VJO is to make sure that whether or not a participant ends up in Veterans Treatment Court, they have all the access to VA care that they're possibly entitled to. So a lot of my clients actually don't participate in vets courts, but they can still end up coming to the VA. And even if they have other than honorable discharge statuses, that can be ruled as VA eligible.
Okay.
So there are a lot of ways to get through the door.
And so now this program is for people before they are convicted. This is not, I just want to clarify, this is not a program for people who are already incarcerated?
No, actually, it's a Veterans Treatment Court in our county is a post-plea program,
Okay.
which means they enter a plea, and that plea can be negotiated amongst the lawyers, but it's a post-plea. That's separate from military diversion, which comes under a different penal code statute, and that is separate. We are dealing with all of those cases in my courtroom, but those who enter Veterans Treatment Court itself, as opposed to military diversion, the Veterans Treatment Court defendants are post-plea. So they've entered a plea.
So quite possibly someone who's already incarcerated could, instead of serving that term, could potentially be a candidate for Veterans Treatment Court and receive care instead?
Yes, and sometimes part of, because it is individualized for each veteran, we look at each case and we determine what the issues are and what they need. Some of it may include some incarceration, some not, but those are all things that the team talks about. Ultimately, I make the final decision.
So I want to pull the mentors into this because obviously there's the defined roles of the providers and the courts and then the opportunity for the veteran. But part of the program is the mentor program. And I think this is interesting because we're out of time here, but this is a way for someone to get involved who's not in any type of legal trouble. And so real quickly here, in just a couple sentences, Mo, what does it take for someone to become a mentor in the Veterans Treatment Court?
Well, I mean, for myself, I think it's just I want to help out these veterans who are in justice involved, to help them. I understand that they have some issues from their military service that may have led to this justice involvement, and I want to make sure that they're getting the treatment that they need, rather than spending time incarcerated. So for me,
just the interest.
Just the interest.
Yeah,
I think it's all you need.
Be a veteran?
No, you don't need to be a veteran. I think, in fact, I think somebody who has already been justice involved is probably a good candidate for this.
Good.
Great.
Well, we'll talk more about this. We're not done. We get to spend some more time talking about this topic, and we'll talk maybe about the outcomes, what we would expect the veteran to see as a result of finishing the Veterans Treatment Court. So tonight we're discussing Veterans Treatment Courts if you've just joined us, and we're going to talk about other resources and support for veterans involved with the justice system. It's been a great show so far. We've had some questions. We hope that you can join us. Our lines are open. Please contact us right now via Facebook chat or by phone to join the conversation or ask a question about this very important topic. Before we continue, we wanted to take you to our Vet on the Street segment with Ryan Berg. Ryan visited with members of Vietnam veterans of Diablo Valley to ask them their thoughts and expectations about the premiere of Ken Burns' documentary, The Vietnam War, which will air right after the show on your local PBS channel. The extended version of this interview will be posted on Facebook. Please enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Berg with Veterans Voices, and I'm here at the Crow Canyon Country Club in Danville, California, speaking with Vietnam veterans about the new PBS documentary, Vietnam, set to premiere this month. And I'm here today speaking with Bill Green of Vietnam Veterans of Diablo Valley. Bill, how are you?
I'm well, Ryan. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What can I do for you?
So, we were curious, are you going to watch the documentary?
Absolutely. His documentaries are unbelievable to start off with. And naturally, we want to see what he does with the Vietnam documentary.
And I'm now here with Jerri Yahiro. Jerri, thanks for being with us tonight.
Good.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
being willing to answer some questions and reflect.
Yes.
So I was just curious, are you going to watch the series?
Oh, very definitely. I saw the previews on it, and again, it's anything that productions that Ken Byrne does. Looks like he's covered the vast gamut of what the Vietnam War was all about.
What are your feelings prior to watching it? Have you been seeing previews or?
I haven't seen any previews. I believe I saw him interviewed on some show. I can't remember what it was, but I'm interested to see, because he's always brought out a very comprehensive story of whatever he's dealing with. So.
And as part of the story, what's been missing sort of from other documentaries? I mean, I know we haven't seen the documentary yet, but what might you be looking for, and hopefully, what will other people get to see? I mean,
well, in Vietnam, I was in a very small area, a very small part of the country, and I would like to see more of what was going on in other parts of the country. I haven't seen a lot of film or movies about Vietnam.
one of the things that they pulled away from the documentary was, in war, there is no single truth. How does that resonate with you?
It is absolutely true. If you think of people, like in small units, and what they think the actual goal might be, or what the Army is actually trying to do, it has nothing to do with what the generals are thinking. So I think it's very true that there are a lot of different truths.
Now I'm here with John. John, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I just have one question for you. Do you plan to watch the series Vietnam later this month?
I'm really at odds. I saw the trailer, and I can watch Civil War movies. I can watch Second World War. I can watch Korean stuff, but Vietnam is too close to home. So I cannot see, like, The Deer Hunter. I could not see that. I couldn't see Full Metal Jacket. And I went to see Robin Williams on Good Morning America. I almost had to run out of the theater. It was too lifelike. So I don't know. I don't know.
How might you encourage someone who, is 20 years old, 25 years old out there, who happens to be on county TV right now? How might you encourage them to watch, actually, participate and watch the documentary?
All you can do is, explain to them what it's about, and they have to make their decision whether they want to watch it or not. But
what's important about hearing the story of Vietnam?
Well, I think why we lost 58,000 young guys, and they should know what it's about. Why we did lose them, brothers, fathers. I think it's important to, just like we learned about World War II, and our relatives, why they passed on, and so it's a good history. It's good for history, yeah.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Those were the perspectives of veterans here at Vietnam Veterans of Diablo Valley. If you can, please consider watching the PBS documentary Vietnam, which will be airing for the rest of this month. Thank you.
Welcome back. Just a reminder that the Vietnam War will air right after the show on your local PBS channel. Stay tuned. Later on in the show, we will have a special interview with Carl Merlantes, author of Matterhorn, and what it is like to go to war. If you are just joining us tonight, we are talking about Veterans Treatment Court with those directly involved in the program here in Contra Costa County. It looks like we have a caller now, Zeev.
Zeev, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
All right, welcome to the show, Zeev. Thank you so much for calling in. Go ahead. You have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank David Chernov for doing such a great job at the VA. I think he's great. And
great, kudos.
I wanted to ask him, how was it the recent hearing for the unfortunate veteran who got accused of I guess, manslaughter or something with another veteran nearby. It was very difficult. I think David did a great job at the hearing. I was wondering what his take was on all that.
Well, thanks, sir. It is true that outside of my involvement with the Veterans Treatment Courts, I will sometimes, with the permission of the vet involved, assist justice-involved vets who have criminal cases going on and make sure that the judge is able to consider their relevant military background or service-connected disabilities or treatment concerns. I'm not going to discuss the particular case that I think you're referring to because I don't think that'd be appropriate, but I appreciate you bringing it up. It sort of speaks to the breadth of the VJO program nationally at the VA. It actually is funded by the Homelessness Initiative, the central office initiative from the VA. We've worked with over 220,000 justice-involved vets as they've been exited from either state prisons or county jails since 2009. There's a mandate that every medical center at the VA now has at least one VJO, or somebody who's outward-facing, dealing with the treatment needs of justice-involved veterans in the community. And that's an example of VJO sort of making its presence known and making sure access to the broader VA is available to, in the case that I think this caller is referring to, a veteran who would not otherwise really have availed himself. The VA really needed it. He was a combat vet with undertreated PTSD.
Well, Zeev, thank you so much for joining us, and I invite other people who are watching the show tonight, even if you're not a veteran, to call in, ask a question, a comment, participate in this very important topic. And I think that that was a great call because it showed just how a life can be touched positively by being involved in a veterans treatment court, whether it be the veteran or even the provider. And I think that goes back to the role of the mentors. And this is something that is a volunteer role for you, Mo, right? This is not something you're being paid for. And if so, is there a particular mentor population that is in high demand?
No, I think anybody could be a mentor. I think especially with the number of female veterans getting out of the military, and also minority veterans, people who kind of match those demographics can probably provide a positive impact in the program. I know for myself, you know, my interest in helping veterans is what got me involved. I think I'm in a unique case too because, you know, I do have a day job, but my day job does allow me to work to do this and not have to leave work and you know, sacrifice work hours. But then I also provide the ability to connect veterans that are in the program, the treatment court, with services because of my familiarity with the VA and community programs. So.
And so do you see a lot of participation in the veteran treatment courts by female veterans?
Are you asking me that question?
Either any one of you.
I can say in the three courts that we site visited before we started our planning process, there were a couple of mentors who were female. I would like to say that the mentor piece of this is one of the reasons for the success of the veterans treatment courts. I think the mentors create that bond, that almost sponsor type of relationship with a veteran, and if they are veterans themselves, then they can relate to the experience that the veteran who is in court has had. And I've heard from numerous people that that is the key to the success of the program, is that mentor piece. And we encourage the mentors to come to every court appearance so we can get feedback as well. You know, how is this going? What do we need to adjust?
Right.
And so how are we doing, how is Contra Costa County doing as far as mentor participation? Is there a need for more mentors, or?
There will always be a need for more mentors. And right now, I think we have six or seven, and they've been wonderful. They've come to our two court appearances so far, our two courts. We will need more as we have more veterans join the program. And
because
so
it's a long program, it's 18 months,
it's
right?
a minimum of 18 months. It can go longer than that, depending on how well they go through the various phases of the program. And so we will always need more mentors, and we encourage all veterans who have some free time, and others, but particularly veterans who have some free time to call and perhaps become part of our program.
I'd like to also mention that the mentor program, the mentors are not there to report back to the courts about what the veteran discloses. We're there simply to be an ear, to be somebody to help them access care if needed. Those going through the treatment courts can be sure that what they tell us is in confidence. Of course, mandatory reporting applies, but
right, very important. You're a friend. You're a peer.
Absolutely.
You're not there to hold them accountable or tattletale on them or anything. You're there to walk them through the process and tell them that, in some instances like yours, Mo, that you're a veteran and you've had challenges yourself.
Certainly.
So when we talk about the mentor program being responsible for the success, what does success look like for a veteran who goes through the Veterans Treatment Court and comes out having addressed some of the underlying mental health issues?
I think there are many ways to define and perhaps measure the success of the Veterans Treatment Courts. My understanding, at least from the VA's perspective, we're hoping to see veterans who haven't had their underlying needs addressed, in some cases ever, get involved, get connected to necessary treatment, crucial treatment, get diagnosed for the first time. As I mentioned earlier, the VJO is funded by the Homeless Office. Justice involvement is a powerful predictor of homelessness in addition to a number of other psychosocial, psychiatric, and substance abuse issues. We want to see people put on the path towards community stabilization, personal and emotional health, and that can happen through connection to the VA. It can happen in conjunction with working with a trusted mentor. There are many ways that can occur. That's our definition of success. Also, we measure it in more concrete terms. Treatment participation. Have they been seen by a primary care physician or gotten an initial diagnostic evaluation for a psychiatric disorder within perhaps a year of their first point of contact with the VJO? How long do they remain under the VA's care? There are just many things that we look at, and there's a lot of data that the VA is crunching, and it's a relatively new initiative, but we're really trying to keep track as best we can.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like we have a couple of questions via Facebook Messenger. The first question is for Judge Brady. This is from Dawn. Is Judge Brady a veteran?
I am not. My father was a veteran of the Korean War, and my father-in-law was a veteran of World War II, but I am not a veteran.
I think that's so important, though, because I think sometimes people think that because they're not a veteran, they can't be involved in helping veterans. And we oftentimes look to the VA to solve these problems of homelessness and substance abuse and mental health. And would you encourage other non-veterans or people who have family members who are veterans to get involved? And if so, what fears do they have to overcome to work with the veteran population, if any at all?
I don't think there are any fears. I would certainly encourage anyone, and I know that when we started this process, we had a number of our court employees in a variety of different job descriptions volunteer to be part of the process because they thought that this was a great effort and a great population to serve, and they offered within their specialty to be part of our Veterans Treatment Court.
And so one last question, and thank you for everyone who joined us tonight by phone and by Facebook chat and such. And just to kind of recap here, how long does it take for someone to go completely through the Veterans Treatment Court? You said at least 18 months, but is there a lot of, veterans don't like red tape. Is there a lot of red tape? And can they get through this program fairly quickly and get back to their lives?
It's a minimum, our program is a minimum 18 months, but it really depends on how they're doing and what their issues are. And as we all know, with some addiction, there is relapse, and then we move forward again. We take 2 steps forward and maybe 1 step back, but we keep working at it. And our goal is that they successfully complete the program.
Fantastic. Well, we had another question from Karen. Karen, I apologize, we're out of time. We can't get your question, but thank you so much for joining us tonight, Karen. Everyone, thank you for being a guest. We could have talked another hour about Veterans Treatment Courts easily. So Duncan, Judge Brady, I really appreciate that the two of you could be on here. David, thank you so much. Maurice, for providing your perspectives as well. Next up, we have a very special guest joining us by phone to discuss the new documentary, The Vietnam War. Mr. Carl Marlantes himself. We will be right back with Carl after this short PSA. Stay tuned.
We all share a common journey. We wanted to serve our country, stand for something bigger than ourselves, and protect the things we love. Although we were ready to face any mission, help those in need, and make a difference, for some of us, coming home was more of a challenge than we expected. In the service, we had each other's backs. But as veterans, it can sometimes feel like we're all alone, even when surrounded by our loved ones.
At the Veterans Crisis Line, we understand what you're going through, and we can help. It's your call.
Carl Marlantes is a Rhodes Scholar and a Marine who served in the Vietnam War. He is the author of 2 incandescently brilliant books, Matterhorn and What It Is Like to Go to War. His wisdom is born from both lived experience and insightful analysis. Welcome to the show, Carl. So good to have you.
No, thank you for having me on.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about this Vietnam War documentary. Ken Burns and Lynn Novick's PBS series, The Vietnam War, has been described as a landmark documentary. Can you tell us what makes it so?
Well, I think it's landmark because, first of all, it's the most comprehensive documentary that I know of. I mean, they start with the French in 1854 and bring it all the way through. And it's the other thing is it's how comprehensive it is. I mean, they've dug up new tapes. They have presidents of the United States of all political parties saying things on the telephone that were just the opposite of what they were saying to the American people. They've uncovered, new information that just sort of astounds me. And I think that the other thing, which is actually even bigger than that, is how even-handed they've dealt with it. I mean, most documentaries try to prove a point. A lot of television tries to prove a point, and they're just laying it out. They've got people who were in the anti-war movement. They've got veterans of the North Vietnamese Army. They've got veterans of the South Vietnamese Army. They've, of course, got veterans from our own Army and Marine Corps, and everybody just says what they say, and the camera just, has the pictures, and there's the voice, and the viewer just gets to sort of listen to it all. And I think it's the other thing about comprehensive is it's like, I think, about 20 hours of documentary. That's an amazingly large documentary. They took 10 years to put it together.
I saw the first episode last night. It was really powerful, and you talked about how, I think the opening quote for the documentary was about how the Vietnam War in many ways was like perhaps having an alcoholic parent where nobody really talked about it. While working on the Vietnam War film project, did you come to appreciate any new truths about the war, given all of the angles they presented?
Well, yeah, quite a few. I mean, I think that one of them that just knocked my socks off is that we weren't fighting Ho Chi Minh. He was out of power, I think, in 1959, and our government didn't even know it. There was a guy named Le Duan that was the power guy in Hanoi, and he just had Ho as a figurehead. And also General Giap. I mean, everybody was all worried, it's like when the Marines were surrounded at Quai Son, General Giap, the genius of Dien Bien Phu, was going to pull off another Dien Bien Phu. Well, he had been exiled to Hungary. He wasn't even there. And, so these sorts of things, I'm over there fighting, and I hear they're telling we're fighting Ho Chi Minh and General Giap, and sorry, they weren't even there. So that was huge. The other thing that I found really interesting working on the film, and also it's in the film, is the veterans from the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong have a lot of bitterness and sadness about that war because they fought it with their hearts for you know, to get freedom from the French and freedom from the Americans and for a lasting, you know, equitable peace. And what did they end up with? A corrupt, totalitarian government. And they can't really speak freely. You know, and there are, of course, they interviewed veterans who are in the government still, or generals in the Army, and their statements are much more raw than these other people. But it was interesting for me to sort of like, you know, the experience of the war and what was that all about is shared by both sides.
Yes, and it was interesting to me last night to learn more about Ho Chi Minh reaching out to presidents of our government for help and, you know, what were his real motives. I don't want to give anything away for those of you who are going to watch the show after this episode of Veterans Voices, but one of the themes in your writing, Carl, relates to the need to understand that aggression has always been a part of our culture and needs to be balanced with our higher values. Can you share some of your thinking about this in light of the Vietnam Film Project, the Vietnam War Film Project? And specifically, I'm curious about the implications of this for how we train those who go to combat and how we receive them back into society.
Well, that's a fairly broad topic.
Yeah.
3 questions there. I mean, first of all, I mean, I thought it was interesting that they opened with my comment about, you know, well, actually opened with the alcoholic parent comment, which was true, but the next thing that I was saying is that we're not nice. We're not the top animal on the food chain because we're nice. And I think that we have to come to a better understanding of this than just repressing it. And we're just an aggressive animal, and it's in our biology. It's not in our culture. It's in our biology. And if you try to repress something, it comes out in a very negative, warped way. I mean, the example is how Victorians tried to suppress sexuality, and you know, it comes out all kinds of twisted forms. You have to be able to incorporate it. You have to be able to see it. And what the trick is to be able to have your I guess your ego control, so that you can say, here it comes. Here it comes. Now I'm not going to let it take me over. I'm going to try and be in control of this. If you don't know it, if you don't recognize it in yourself, that's when the trouble really starts to happen. I think that one thing that they can do in training is to just understand what I call pseudo-speciation. It's a fancy word, but what it means is that you make another human being an animal. I mean, you know, a nip, a kraut, a haji, a towelhead, a sand nigger. I mean, there's all kinds of horrible names that we give to our enemies. And, you know, a lot of people are like horrified, like, well, that's dehumanizing. You can't do that. And I'm saying that, no, it is dehumanizing, but there's a reason for it. It's because you can't pull the trigger if it's another human being. I mean, our soldiers and Marines are decent kids. They're usually 18, 19 years old. They've been raised in a Judeo-Christian culture. Thou shalt not kill. How do you get them to actually do the will of the Republic? Well, we turn the enemy into an animal. And then you can kill an animal, and an animal's trying to hurt your friends, it's trying to kill you. Then you pull the trigger. Well,
yeah, that's something I've often thought about, is that so much of what happens in war, we can actually be prepared to take revenge for people we love. We can be prepared to act and even enjoy experiences of being in combat, even enjoy acts of violence, and it doesn't mean that somebody is at core sociopathic.
That's right. No, I mean, I think that but the key is to bring the awareness. For example, if you told these kids, and especially if you can tell, you know, non-commissioned officers and officers about like just this mechanism we're talking about, when the battle's going on, it's going to be there. I mean, there's nobody going to stop it. But if everybody's aware of it, as soon as the battle's over, you get back into civilization again. I mean, civilization, I always say, is this like cobweb, thin sort of thing that holds us together, holds this violence in check. When you say that, though, but who's responsible for that? Well, actually, it's us, people. And I think that the higher your rank and the older you are, the more responsible you are for being the one that provides that check on our natural aggressions. I've got a great story about this. If it was in my book, if you don't mind me saying something that's in the book, but about we had been in combat, and we'd been fighting for days and had been assaulting, and then they had counterattacked, and I mean there were dead bodies stacked up in front of our fighting holes, and I was going along making the usual hole check, and I saw some of these kids had put ears in their helmet. They cut ears off these bodies and stuck them in their helmet. Now, the first reaction, oh, that's horrible. Well, when you see the carnage that's going all around you, I mean, bodies that have been hit by mortar shells, I mean, a couple of ears in the helmet not going to bother you too much. But I knew that this was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, this is a step too far. And I wasn't even angry at them. But what I did is I said, you can't do this. I know that they killed your friends, but you killed their friends. I mean, look, come on. Let's try and get it straight. So I said, I want you to go down and bury these bodies and put the ears back in with them. So and it wasn't trivial because we were still getting some pot shot sniper fire at us, but we went down in front of the lines and they dug the holes and to throw the bodies in, and they started crying. They started crying. So, and what had happened is that suddenly they weren't animals anymore. They were doing a human burial.
Right. There needs to be this return to the society that we come from and the end of the pseudo-speciation. And I would definitely recommend that everybody read your books. I wish we could talk for so much longer, but we have to go. But thank you so much, Carl, for coming on.
Well, it's great, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye.
I've actually had the opportunity to read Carl's book, What It Is Like to Go to War, and I highly recommend it. Tonight we had a very interesting discussion, and we want to thank each of our guests for helping us to learn more about the Veterans Treatment Courts. Also, thank you, Carl Marlantes, for joining us. Remember that the landmark documentary, The Vietnam War, will air right after this show on your local PBS channel. We all have a story to tell. Do you want to share yours? If so, we'd love to hear from you and possibly have you as a guest on our A Veteran's Voice segment or as a guest on our show. Please reach out to us and tell us more about yourself.
Here are a few resources for veterans and their families. The following resources are also listed on our homepage. Did you know that all honorably discharged veterans will have access to the military exchange beginning on November 11th? Visit vetverify.org if you're a veteran to register. I hear that they even price match with Amazon and Walmart. To learn more about Veterans Treatment Court in California, please visit calvet.ca.gov/vet services. The Concord Vet Center will be open from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the evening from Sunday, September 17th to Thursday, September 21st for all veterans and family to come into the Vet Center and watch the PBS series on Vietnam. The Vet Center will also be answering their phones during those hours, and counselors will be available to speak to any veteran that calls. Does the thought of swimming from Alcatraz excite or even scare you a little bit? Take the Rock, an annual swim from Alcatraz Island to San Francisco, will be held on October 1st this year. Visit taketherock.com to learn how to participate or volunteer. The documentary, The Longest Road, featuring our very own Kevin Graves, will be screening in Hayward on October 5th between 6:30 and 9 p.m. Filmed in Iraq and Syria, this documentary follows Iraq War veteran Richard Campos, Vietnam War veteran Stan Rapata, and Gold Star father Kevin Graves to the front lines of combat. Please go to eventbrite.com and search The Longest Road to get tickets.
We'd also like to thank Vietnam veteran Jim Hardy for his display of art, sculptures, photography, and sketch art on the set tonight. Tonight, we have the honor of displaying the Shadowbox of Jerri Novakovich. Jerri was a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army and tragically died on his 22nd birthday in Vietnam while directing troops during an enemy engagement. To those who knew Jerri, thank you for keeping his life and memory alive in our community. It is a privilege for us to be able to honor this great man's service. Do you have a Shadowbox? If so, please reach out to us. We would love to honor your military service by displaying it on our set. Please join us next month as we speak with veterans about their experiences with the VA, both positive and negative, in an effort to have a balanced and honest dialogue about VA benefits and services. In November, we will explore the creative side of veterans. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. This is Veterans Voices of Contra Costa County signing off, wishing you all a relaxing evening, and for all the veterans out there watching tonight, hua, ura, huya.
Nailed it. Aim high. Good job.